a capitalist economy is as Darwinian as it can get. Okay, it's a constant fight of survival, and I don't think it's the businesses that have the best technology or the businesses that just have the best starting positions or the businesses that have the best molds in today's world that they build that survive. I think the businesses that survive are the ones that have the capability and the organizational ability to evolve the fastest.
Welcome to Transatlantic Titans, the show for Europeans making it big in America. And here is your host, Manny Schoenhuber.
Welcome to Transatlantic Titans, the show about Europeans making it big in America. I am your host, Manny Schoenhuber, and today's Transatlantic Titan is Melf Lorenzen. Melf, thank you very much for joining Transatlantic Titans. Appreciate having you.
Thank you for having me. Thank you. Yeah, no, I think it's a great show you're putting on, and probably it's going to turn into something like the Joe Rogan podcast of Germany or Europe. I think if anything, we need more of this type of communication among countries or also among individuals. I think nowadays, I'm not sure how you perceive it, but I think it's really more polarized than in any other time in my lifetime. Just everybody being on social media, being fed with their own very little world of news and perceptions. And I think with their news feed, they just amplifies their worldviews opposed to challenging it and really having a good conversation. So I think it's great what you're doing, and I'm glad to be here today.
I appreciate it, and I really hope, I certainly hope that you still feel the same way after we're done with this
absolutely. Hey,
conversation.
we'll make it worthwhile for your audience.
One way or another. I would say, as we should always do, let's start at the beginning. And I do think that you and I have something in common. Didn't you also grow up on a farm in Germany?
Oh, that's very true. Yeah, northern Germany. That's spot on. Dairy farm in Germany. Basically, I always say the Wisconsin of Germany. So this is an hour and a half north of Hamburg, close to the borderline to Denmark. My parents were dairy farmers. I think my dad was probably the fourth or fifth generation actually farming on that land in our family. And now my brother has taken over the operation of the farm. Yeah, it's been a great childhood really growing up farming. And now it was a very small village that I grew up in. I'm not sure if that's the same for you, but my village, like we had around a population of maybe 500. We did have a church. We had a pub. We actually, at the time, there was even a grocery store. That by now has closed. There is no single traffic light, no stop sign even. So it's really remote location in Germany. But with that, growing up farming, I really enjoyed it. And I think it probably taught me much more life lessons than I even can think of, right? I think one thing that probably our generation, maybe you, do struggle with today is in finding enough time with your children, right? Today's society and our work life is designed around being in offices, being away from home, having a lot of work trips. And I do really treasure all the time that I got to spend really growing up on a farm. And it's really a family business, right? So you grow up and you learn to contribute from a very early moment on. I think actually I was able to probably drive a tractor before I was able to ride a bike. I remember activities like harvesting the hay or something like that. I was probably taught to steer the tractor, and I was way too small to even reach the pedals with my feet at the time, and just keep it basically straight in a very low gear while my parents and older siblings were loading up the hay bales on the back of the trailer. And then whenever you approach the end of the field, Dad really came around, jumped on the tractor, helped me steer it 180, and then I was again tasked to just keep it straight. But yeah, again, I really treasure the time that I got to spend with my parents growing up and the family. And but yeah, it was really modest background, not poor at all. I mean, we always had food on the table and grew up well and had access to good public education really in that space. But yeah, if you wanted to make it, you had to make it on your own kind of. And I think that's really good. It taught me probably good discipline and strong work ethics. It's something that you can probably relate to. Growing up on farm, you have to be reliable. You gotta get those chores in on a daily basis. So that's very viable actually, and probably has formed me quite in many ways. And yeah, so growing up there, I actually probably a little not the ordinary path I've taken on education. I actually went out of middle school, Realschule, it's called in Germany. It's quite a thing. You can leave after middle school, after 10 years in school. And I did an apprenticeship program. So I was actually curious very early on in the village I grew up in. There was basically two businesses. So if you were not doing farming, there was essentially two businesses. Either there was a carpenter or there was an electrician. And so I interned at an age of, I think, 12 or 13, very early on. And so I did an internship at both of these businesses, and I realized carpenting is not my thing. To electrician, is really something that was based on my curiosity in natural science, and so that was really my thing. And I thought, all right, that's what I want to do. And so at the age of 16, after leaving middle school, I did an apprenticeship program in an oil refinery, and that was quite forming too. I moved basically out of home at the family farm at the age of 16 at the time. Moved to a place called Heide, let's say 100 miles away from home. And I had my own little apartment, 1-bedroom apartment, super small, but at the age of 16. In Germany, with 16, you can't drive a car, so I only had a motorbike to basically get my groceries, to drive to the school, to get to the workplace at the refinery. And that, you had to budget also, right? You get your monthly income as an apprentice, and then you had to budget for groceries, for your rent in that apartment. And so that was very good lesson learned, I think. And it was really gradually, I mean, those jobs we have today, the title that you carry in your signature, the titles that we carry around DWT, like when I grew up, I never heard of what is a chief executive officer, what does a president do, what does a vice president safety do, or a chief financial officer. Titles, like, they were foreign words to me, right? So it was really gradually where moving into going through the apprenticeship program in the refinery, I got exposure to jobs like, oh wow, okay, that's what I can do with a college degree, and then I eventually can become a project engineer. So that's what I wanted to do. And then I was very fortunate at the time. I applied with Vestas, leading a manufacturer for wind turbines, for a sponsorship program. So my college program was sponsored, which was fantastic because that was my way into college, really. Otherwise, it would have been hard to afford at the time. And so, yeah, I got a great opportunity for joining university as industrial engineer. I stayed with Vestas a little longer and then joined DWT, now coming to my current job. It's quite a journey here, actually, till today. I joined DWT also around 12 years ago. At the time, was a young, upcoming, growing business, which we still are, but especially like that in Germany at the time. So there was only the operations in Germany. And I was the first one to lead up the international business development team. And that was exciting. Even a younger version of myself back in the time, there was a lot of opportunity for self-development, right? And shaping a little bit also the trajectory of a business. So that was really cool to do. So joined the organization, did international sales for 2 years. Then at that time, my manager, a great mentor of mine, I think you know him actually, Matthias Brandt. He said, well, I've seen you being able to sell. Now show me that you actually can manage. So when we entered the Spanish market, at the time we had around 60 to 100 employees throughout that time. I was then tasked to lead the Spanish business, and it was quite a task. At the time I had not much of leadership experience. You're going into a vastly different culture, and I was in my mid-20s, end 20s at the time. And you had to replace so we went into the into the market by acquiring 2 smaller companies that we then merged, and I had to basically replace the former owners of that business. So those were, fully established businessmen, self-made businessmen, build up their business. They were probably in their end 40s, mid 50s. And so here I come, right? You step in and you manage the business. And honestly, I loved every piece of it. It was fantastic to live in Spain. I really loved it. However, when I got the opportunity to expand the business operations to the US, I gladly did so. And that was in early 2018. So came here, did a little bit of a market research. Probably that's something we delve into later on. Where do you go in the US? Like, what's the right city actually to go to if you want to operate a wind operations, right? And so we settled on Houston, and I think hindsight, this was among many decisions that I would have probably done differently, and you learned a ton, but that decision was spot on. It was a great place for us to start a business in the industry that we're in, and I think initially it was like a 2 or a 3 year type of expat agreement, but that now turned into the new home, and me and my family, we live just a little north of here in the Woodlands, and we love the community, we love the neighborhood, and I'm just glad to be part of this community now. So quite a journey, and yeah, exciting all the way.
So if you're summing up the personal journey, you're still very young, right? But if you're thinking about it, and I try to do that at least once a year, to reflect on these very similar upbringings that you just explained, maybe just geographically, you all the way up north in Germany, me all the way
we
down
both
south
slept in Bayern Munich bed sheets, though.
That's right. There's still a question on that later on, so we'll get there. Right. But as you're reflecting on that, and that's what I always thought to myself when I first got on that plane at Munich airport, have never visited the US, not even as a tourist. I said, okay, I'm just going to do this. And now fast forward 15 years later, the farm boy from northern Germany with the farm boy from southern Germany sitting together in Houston, the maybe soon 3rd largest city in the country, doing business. What are your thoughts just generally as you're reflecting on that and on that story? Did you ever consider that? Did you ever think, okay, this is, of course, I'm sure you had dreams, and goals in particular. But if you're reflecting on that, how do you approach it with gratitude? Do you approach it with, there's still more to come, I'm just getting started?
Yeah, I bet a bit of both. Of course, a lot of gratitude because, look, my journey through life, as much as you think it's attributable to dedication and self-drive and motivation, it is absolutely a product of a lot of great mentors and people that have helped me, enabled me, have trusted me, have entrusted me with certain responsibilities, with challenges, and say, Melf, this might be the very first time that you're going to face this challenge, but I've seen you before and I know you're going to do well. So there is certainly a lot of gratitude that I have towards the people that have helped me along the way. At the same time, an exciting journey. And well, like you said, being young, hopefully we're just at our midpoints, if not even a little earlier on in life. So I sure there is a lot to come. And I think approaching it, like you mentioned that moment, your first time on the plane, I probably had a little advantage over you in that case. I had been as a tourist in the United States prior to moving here. Now, being tourist, rather the East and the West Coast, opposed to the heartland in the Midwest and Southwest of the United States. But I really approach it with an open-mindedness. And I think that speaks probably for anyone if you want to move, whether it's within the same country you want to move, probably just to a new neighborhood, or whether it is on a global scale into a new country. Being open-minded, self-reflected also, knowing what you are like. What is it that you seek, right? What is it that you need to be happy and whole? And at the same time also adaptable and open, just open-minded. Look, the sports scene is vastly different in the US than it is in Europe. While in Germany you probably get a lot of compliments for what you've accomplished in soccer career. Many here haven't heard of this, right?
That's right. Soccer to begin with. Club, right?
That's right. Yeah. So look, you got to be open-minded, right? And just approach it. And I think that's really what makes life so exciting about all the lessons learned and the people that we meet along this journey.
Obviously have been fortunate to know you for a few years now, but I'd like to pick up on what I think is very important, what you just said, that mentorship aspect, that having role models and they also entrusting you with certain leadership aspects. Are you already in the process, have you over the years, trying to also trust others with those roles? What's your leadership style as the CEO of a company here in the US? Are you trying to pay that forward, so to speak?
Yeah, generally speaking, yes. I think people would say, if you asked people that worked very close with me along the ways, that I definitely give trust in the first place. And I do believe in the good and in people's talents. Now, not blindly. It has to be merit-based. That's what I love about the United States and our society over here. It's very much so meritocracy and based on merits, based on people having shown. There is always a track record, right? We both sit here in probably mid stages of our life, but there is a track record, okay? You know where people have fumbled, where people have succeeded in the past and why. Was it just a lucky coincidence of all kinds of factors, or is there a certain threat throughout this journey? Okay, did they do something right? And then you have to get a good feel of putting people up for success. Are they to take the next step? Are they ready to go from being a single contributor now being a manager of people, which is a complete different success profile? And you've probably seen that journey over and over, where the best technician or best craftsman of any kind is then perceived to be the manager of a group. Now, the success profile is vastly different, and if done wrong, actually it's really a big loss for the business, because that individual you might lose over, might not be successful in that role.
That's something a lawyer could have told you. Trust but verify. But you already mentioned the cultural differences and in particular business culture, the differences in business culture. You've lived in many different places all over the world, obviously Germany. You mentioned Spain already, Chile.
Yeah, I studied in Santiago de Chile, that's right.
If I remember that
that's
correctly.
Right, that's right.
Maybe tell us a little bit about that experience, studying there, but then also talk about those cultural, obviously language barriers, maybe, but how does that approach your business success, your managerial success, the company's business here in the US? Because it's a mixed match, almost like a melting pot, as we call it here in the US, right? Of different cultures, different languages, different aspects, different approaches.
I think, those differences really is what makes this world so exciting between countries, cultures, societies. And yes, I had a great opportunity to engage with a lot of people from different walks of life and different parts of the world, whether it is especially going back to my early days in international business development with DWT. I was able to support clients over in Japan. Studying to your question on South America, that came by midway through my studies. We had the opportunity to do a semester studying abroad. And as a second language, other than English, I chose Spanish at the time. One reason was that, and little did I know, that later on in life this would be a fantastic opportunity for two reasons. One, that was probably one of the reasons I actually got that opportunity to lead our Spanish business. Secondly, it could have not been a better language to pick to live, especially here in the southern part of the United States. So that were all lucky coincidence. I think in the first place I chose Spanish over French because I had not the best memories of French classes from school.
That rings a bell.
What a good coincidence for sure. And so we went through a couple of semesters of having classes in Spanish, and I really wanted to make that language stick. So I decided to go to Chile to have a full semester on with classes on speaking Spanish throughout the whole year to really make it stick as a language. So that was that part. But I would say overall, yes, there is vastly different cultures, and if we speak in business terms, probably a funny story, or funny, but I think it captures this really well. Obviously, this is just personal, and it doesn't speak universally for everyone in places. But let me give you an example. So the village that I grew up in, northern Germany, we did something that actually is really cool. They build wind turbines community owned. So there is an opportunity for the population that lives in the village or surrounding area to have equity into those renewable assets, which drives a lot of local engagement, drives a lot of course, acceptance for the wind, and actually excitement, because there is a lot of tax money, but also individuals. It's a little outsider. But I was already in the wind industry. And then it came the time that they wanted to start that community wind farm. 13 turbines that they still operate today. And they had to elect a local board. Now, who's going to go, and what you do on a board? You're a supervisory board. You're basically overlooking the operations, selection of the manufacturer for those wind turbines. You have companies that do that, but there is a lot of expertise you're going to give. And I thought, well, having been 2 or 3 years at the time in the wind industry, and I think at the time I actually was the only one in that village that even had direct experience in the wind industry. I thought, hey, that's really something I can contribute. I can give back to the community and contribute and help. And so there was elections. And I still remember today, my dad, he was very, brave. Probably you would expect every good dad doing. But he got up, so it was a huge town hall in the village, right? And he got up and he was proposing me for the job, okay? And I said, okay. So we had elections. And long story short, I was not elected. And you can speak to it because you also grew up more on the countryside, right? So I call it an establishment culture. So you have to be in the right circles. You have to be in the right family. You may have to be the head of the local firefighting department or a sports club, it's an establishment culture. And so that's like a little anecdote for 13 turbines back where I grew up. Okay. Now to Spain, on the business side, very much so the same. Very much driven by family, I say dynasties. But I think you understand, right? There's large families invested, and you have to know the right people and build your network. And as a result, things are growing slower. We as a business were able to expand and build trust through many, relationship building activities, but it takes a lot of effort. So now, come over to the United States. I mentioned earlier the meritocratic principle, and really this awesome place is built. I came here 2018, and if I say I mean, okay, initially it was just me, but I was very fortunate to early on already hire incredible, talented people that I was able to work with and build up this business. But you come here, you're basically end of 20, I think, at the time. You have no track record, nothing here locally, okay? And you come here, you find investors that enable you, they'll trust you, they give you millions of dollars. You find clients that are willing to give you a shot, right? And they trust in your talents, they enable you to grow. And the same is true for the employee side, and probably something you can relate. When I say establishment culture, I do believe. Now, I have not had that challenge myself, so I'm only putting dots together now what I'm observing. It is a tougher job if you have no track record, you have no reputation built yet, to build a strong, talented, high-performing team in Germany or do it in Spain, opposed to here, because people are willing to take a shot, give it a chance, right? And I just love this, I say, entrepreneurial culture opposed to the establishment culture. I think only here in the US, there is boardrooms, okay, where you have mid-20-year-old college grads, green-tainted hair, raising millions or billions of dollars of investors, because investors see the talent in them and want to enable them, unlock their talent to build the business and ultimately flourish, right? And build a business. I think those examples, those strong capital markets combined with and venture capital culture, really, this entrepreneurial culture, along with giving people chances and then, of course, meritocratic-based growth opportunities, is very unique about this country.
I don't know if you remember that conversation that we had. I would say it was probably 3-4 years ago, over a few beers.
Can only have been 1 or 2.
Yeah, maximum. And we actually talked about the whole board structures here in the US, the enabling, also merit-driven, as you call the culture. And I would ask you, why do you think is it so different? But then also, why is something like failure expected in the US to make it to the big boards? Because if you're looking at a resume, a CV here in the United States, and you have one success after the other, that may be great for raising capital, right? Because if you're looking at private equity, venture capitalists investing in your company, why do you think it may actually be not beneficial if you're looking to, hey, I want to be the CEO of a Fortune 500 company, I want to sit on the board of a Fortune 500 company? Why do you think, on the one hand, the business aspect, but then also culturally, if you're comparing that to a country like Germany, if you go bankrupt as a company, solvency as a company, you're never going to see the boardroom ever again, or a reputable boardroom, so to speak, from the inside anymore. Why do you think that is, and where does it all tie together to what you just said, where you're just enabling businesses, you're enabling hard workers, and it doesn't really matter what level you're in, whether you're an employee, a normal employee, blue collar, white collar, or then you're entering the boardroom?
I certainly believe it has some to do with the history of our nation here in the United States. And what I mean by that is, if we look back, and if you think about it in historical terms, it's not all that long. We talk about a couple of generations back. We had
250 years this year.
Well, that's for, yes, but if we look at, the settlements in the West, we talk about 100 something years, right? So it's very recent history we're talking about. And people coming out here, I mean, who came here, right? It is the brave, it's the bold. It's at the time that there was no, when does it, Roosevelt actually implemented a Social Security, but that was in the 30s. So before that, there was no support from anyone. So you came here, if you wanted to make it, you have to make it on your own. And so this merit-based approach is very much so American, and it's just a few generations back that exactly this was the caterpillar for growth and prosperity here in the nation. So I think it has a lot to do with the history.
Do you think that's the ideal business model that really drives the country as a whole forward here?
Business model in what ways?
In, we are enabling you, come here, you can, the whole modern American dream, as we call it, if you can make it here, you can make it anywhere approach. Isn't that what should be the business model to attract global talent?
I certainly believe so, yes. I mean, on the one hand, providing opportunity for talented people to come here and just prosper and just try to be the very best of their own and have a good life. That's the one piece, providing a good legal system where everybody, you basically have equal justice for everyone. So that type of base principle, okay, and of course how we're dealing with each other, even on the political stage, right? How polarized versus how unified as a nation and as a society we are. These are all important factors. If you figure in international talent, you're part of the international community as much as I am, and you speak to people nowadays, I think, as being a top talent inherently means that at least as a second language you speak English. And you can almost, with international talents, they can look at the world card just like a menu card in the restaurant, right? And they can say, where do I want to go? And to be a good place, providing all of that safety, the opportunity to prosper. And at the same time, you mentioned capital markets. Yes, I think this is the best global capital market that we're having. Now, we haven't invented it. If you look back, I think that the Romans actually, back in Venice and Florence, they already had like bonds that they were trading and such. And then I think credit to the Dutch, I think it was in Amsterdam, I think 1602 was the Dutch stock market. And they were trading. And back in the time, actually, very fascinating. I think 1 out of every 50 adults in the Netherlands at the time used to have stocks. So they had already a good capital market at the time with the Dutch guilder, and then they were very inventive. They built these ships that were able to just sail much further than it was the Spanish before. So they just have, of course, a technological advantage, and then they built a strong capital market. So it's not the first time, but you see it's a very important ingredient to just unlock talent and enable people.
And then to close the loop on the question I asked earlier, how important is failure in the US?
Thank you for coming back. I'm not sure it's really a US thing. I'd rather say it speaks for a mature character. Look, I know we all put out there our CVs, and the CVs, they read like, wow, top notch.
Your LinkedIn
Actually, I would love to see people put their failures on CVs. And here's why. It speaks to the individual. Life is all about lessons learned, and it's all about improvement. Okay, you fail, you reflect, you learn. And the more of these cycles you go through, you can probably speak for it from an athlete career. Like, you lose games. So what do? You lose games. One thing is the coach is going to make you do extra runs on the day after, no day off, the day after game day. Okay. But outside of that, what you do? You're going to reflect. We'll go minute by minute. We'll go through every scene. Okay. Every attack, every time we lost the ball. What did we do different? How are we going to win the game next time? Similar in life. You go from failure to failure, but it's important what do you do about it and what do you learn from it, okay? Of course, building guardrails so that failure is nothing catastrophic. For us, very important, we have 70% of our employees in the United States work on a daily basis on the front line, exposed to hazards like high voltage. They work with heavy loads. They might be rigging, certain components up into the wind turbines. So with those hazards, if I say taking risk or failing has to be institutionally on a level to where failure is not going to cost you or injure you in any way on that level, or as a person, you want to make sure that you're diversifying. And I mean, as an investor speaking, having 10, 15 uncorrelated revenue streams that ideally balance themselves out are uncorrelated. So, you have to make sure, of course, that you protect the downside. But then at the same time, it's truly all about lessons learned. And so I think it speaks actually for the society that this is being valued rather than, and I do strongly believe actually in many jobs that you apply for here in the United States, more so than say any type of interview process you might go through for a role in, say, particularly Central Europe. It's actually about what went wrong and what did you learn from it? What did you do next time? And what you want to see is somebody's ability to take those lessons learned. And that's actually, it's very painful. It's really painful, okay? And what you can't have ego. You have to be very, you have to have a lot of humility. And actually, sometimes also the ability to make fun of yourself and say,
right.
hey, I made a mistake, we messed up. So I think it's a very good thing. It should be actually, if you ask me, the model, globally speaking, rather than, because you have those cultures where it's not okay to admit mistakes. It's not okay to show any weaknesses. It's not okay to, your supervisor asks you, hey, do this. And then they say, oh, Manny, or actually Manny is supposed to be a go-getter. Oh yeah, I got this, boss. And you never ask the question, hey, boss, I've never done this before. Can you coach me? I mean, what does good look like? What do you expect me to do? Or what do I have to be careful of? Can you come with me, actually? The first time, I don't know, I have an important client meeting. I have a board meeting. I'm pitching to investors. Can you come with? Can you show me? How can I do this well? So this type of admitting own weaknesses, own limits, is an absolute strength. But what you have to have is you have to have a culture, like if we talk about business and what makes it actually to be a high-performing team, admitting those. And we call it vulnerability-based trust. It's based on a book from Patrick Lencioni, The 5 Dysfunctions of a Team. Actually, great read. I want to put it out there. One of the books that definitely has had an impact on me. And so the base for everything of a high-performing team is having this vulnerability-based trust, where you're okay to speak up and say, hey, I messed up. Hey, Manny, I could have not done this presentation like you. I can't do a podcast like you do. This is amazing, So that having this type of honesty with your team is the absolute base. And I think you can probably relate to that in soccer. It really goes to any high-performing team. And so, again, this being more culturally a norm over here is something I enjoy, I flourish on, opposed to the opposite, where it's not okay to admit.
Yeah. And I couldn't agree more, because especially as a goalkeeper in soccer and football,
well, you were always the one blamed,
received
right?
Immediate feedback.
Well, that's right. That's right. And it's very harsh. And you get a lot of feedback. You get feedback, in that moment. Co-players, coaches, actually fans, people in the stands.
That's
right. But how did you cope with that? You must have had a lot of terrible nights of sleep if you feel like, hey, I lost the team the point. I lost the game today. Man, that would have been mine. I
mean, that's why I'm still reflecting, like I said, like we started this conversation every year at least once, because it is something that is part of your DNA now, what you've experienced as a 16, 17, 18-year-old, because the coaches you looked up to, whether it was my goalkeeper coach or the team's coach, or then playing professionally, as an 18-year-old on a team with somebody who's 36 years old. They're in the same locker room, so their outlook on life and they critiquing you for things that you did.
You completely take it by the heart.
You should ask my parents, especially my mom, how many discussions we had. on the drive home after practice or after a game.
So how was that like? Was she more like trying to help you get over it, like reflecting on it and feeling good about making a mistake? Because it is part of life, it's part of learning. Or did you actually on the drive home get another round of critique from your parents telling you how to do better?
No, and I think that's key, and that's also what I'm trying to pay forward, not only to associates at the firm, colleagues, others who are reaching out, who are looking for mentorship, right? There's young law students all over the country reaching out, and in particular, obviously, Europeans. They're thinking about, okay, we like what you've done, how can we maybe accomplish something similar? And then obviously to the kids and to the next generation, where it's about, I think there's nothing better than constructive criticism that you can learn from. But
both giving and receiving, actually.
Giving and receiving.
Correct.
Exactly. And this is what I'm trying to do. And I think sports is an integral part to that because of that immediate feedback that you're receiving. But what sometimes I think doesn't get enough attention is the monitoring of how much a maybe culturally or psychologically not that developed or forthcoming coach, how much of an impact they can have on someone who's a teenager. So there has to be a bit more policing, in my opinion, when it comes to that. But it also shouldn't be like, oh, everybody gets a trophy kind of environment, right? You have to find the middle grounds, and that get you, because in German we say, life is not a Ponyhof. But then it also has to be, and I would say, to answer your question, my parents have done a really good job at that, where they say they point out the mistakes, but you learn from it and you take an approach. And that, at the end of the day, still when I'm thinking about the best coaches I had in soccer and football, that's what you remember. You now know the coaches that didn't do a good job at it, right? There were just no human aspect to it. I would always say that the best coaches when it comes to educating has to be the assistant coach. Because you know you have the head coach and they're supposed to be the chairman of the board, right? Steer the ship in the right direction. But the assistant coach, they should be the ones putting the arm around you and say, okay, let's talk about it, let's look at the videotape, let's do this differently. And if you have that combination, head coach, leader in a company, and then, so to speak, the other officers on the team, whether it's your CFO, whether it's your COO, and then HR in particular, I think that makes it a great, not only working experience, but then also to get to the next level. Because the more invested you are as an employee into a company, because you see people care, leadership cares to drive us forward, but they also do it with the right amount of, as you said, humility. I think that ties everything together. Whether you're talking sports, whether you're talking business, whether you're talking probably, I'm not a very good singer or musician, but I would expect the same thing in those industries. Right?
Listening to you, I think everybody of us now has pictures of former coaches, former people in life that,
you know,
that put into one or the other category, right? You gave a great example. What you answered, you asked me actually half an hour ago. You asked like, are you trusting people? Are you giving forward? That's exactly it. Now think of coaching, right? You want to give people opportunities. You have the track record, like I mentioned. You see them in practice, okay? You see somebody, very young, not having played a single pro football game, but you see him do well in practice. All right, give him a shot, give him a chance, right? So he can play prime time and prove himself. And I think other important factor is if you can help someone one person's ability to fail well, and learn from it. Fail forward, as you say, exactly. I think, because it doesn't help if your parents would have been like only protecting the child, right? Never confronting them with weaknesses. What happens? They will feel at some point, it's accumulating, it's amplifying, and at some point they will fail real bad because they might have really a misperception of themselves. You might not know, hey, I'm Melf, this is what I've done well in the past, this is where is my weak spot. I may have someone to help me, okay? I may have someone to help me in this type of situation because this is not where I am at my natural best, as an example. And the better you learn about this, and I think it's, Lombardi, a football coach from Green Bay, he put out the principle of tough love. I like that. Tough love being someone really caring, like you meant your parents, really caring for you, wanting you to be successful in life, but tough in the same time where, no, there's critical feedback. And in the end, there is an art to it. Don't get me wrong. Like, not to be that harsh, as you said earlier, with being the young player in the locker room, and there is like just bashing or something like that. That's not what I meant. There is an art to it, how to deliver constructive feedback. But I think ultimately it's immensely important for anyone's personal development.
And I think what makes matters even worse, what I see nowadays a lot, unfortunately, is parents running to the coach and telling the coach what they're doing wrong with the kids, right? And
well, but I also see
a responsibility.
True.
Anyways, a little X-course about soccer coaches and football coaches.
Yeah. But there is a lot of lessons, life lessons, and like we've both laid out, there is a lot of analogies. What you see in soccer to what applies in life in general, what applies in business. So I think it's a very relevant conversation to have.
Let's talk about business. Let's talk about DWT. Let's switch gears here. Tell us a little bit about, you already mentioned wind and you mentioned energy. Tell us a little bit about what you guys are doing. What's your mission? What's the goal here? What do you guys do globally? What are you guys doing here in the US?
Okay, yeah, let's dive a little into that. So all we do is renewable energy. Historically, as DWT, fully focused on wind energy, operation and maintenance, as well as repair. Anything that basically takes a long life cycle. Think of a wind turbine being installed, manufactured by one of the manufacturers, and then installed. Someone owns the wind turbine. They would bring in a partner that brings technical expertise to operate, maintain that equipment as it is designed to throughout the life cycle. So that's essentially what we do. Our mission is to simply lower the cost of clean energy, and by that contribute to a larger amount of energy being of clean energy sources, and ultimately making energy abundant. I mean, I think the single strongest indicator of economic power for a nation, or whether it's personal wealth, GDP per capita, name it, is actually the availability of energy. If you think of what gets people out of poverty, it's access to energy. And probably in the 21st century, even more so than it was the case in the 20th and in the 19th century, if you think about not just data center, AI, robotics, all that, now actually really being a reality now. So energy is super, super important. It's the basic foundation of our life. And what we do at DWT is through great operation, maintenance, repair procedures, lowering the cost. And lowering the cost is not to do it cheap, but rather raising quality so we have great reliability of machines and uptime. Now, in Europe, focusing solely so far on the wind side, and also it's truly the operation and maintenance. What we do a little differently over here, and I really love it, it's called repowering. So in the old days, at some point, an investor would say, well, there is a wind turbine. It might have been in operation for, say, 12, 15 years. Let's tear it down and let's just put up a complete new turbine in its place. And what we do now in repowering is we, together with the asset owner, do a lot of installation of upgrades. So basically improving the asset, the machine, okay, to make it weather fast for another 10 years of operation or even longer. So extending life. And I think that's fantastic in order to lower cost of energy, because you could imagine it doesn't take the same amount of investment like it does for a new turbine if you can just extend life. So we have a strong engineering background, strong supply chain background. Having, of course, headquarters in Europe allowed us to have access to a lot of smart people that back in the days were designing those wind turbines, have probably been previously with one of the manufacturers, knowing turbines in and out, and now have gone through long years of operating them, knowing what fails, what are the weak spots, and now providing upgrade opportunities for them. So yeah, that's what we do. But if you ask about mission, really, this is our contribution to society, say our vision. Mission is really to grow our people. DWT, we're a people business. We don't have fancy codes and algorithms like the Metas and the Googles and Amazons of the world. What we have is the ability of our people, the talent of our people. And then it's a leadership and a culture thing to have a great orchestration and culture in the organization that makes people work well together and be productive. So the power of our people and growing our people, enabling our people to grow, that truly in the core is what DWT.
Speaking about people, how many employees do you currently have in the US?
I think as of this recording today, I do believe we have around 380 employees. Now we started with, say, a handful. I mean, I came and again, I was very fortunate that people gave me an opportunity. Many that still are on the, you may know some, like, okay, not dropping all the names now. You know some, right? They went all this journey with us, and I'm just super grateful that they took an opportunity and took a chance on me, on the business, to make this a successful journey that's worthwhile. So yeah, no, 380.
All over the country?
So yes. We have, in terms of our offices, like back office, our training center, we're actually building a multi-million-dollar training center right now. We have the grand opening later this year in May. We're having an actual wind turbine into that training facility. I think it's a state-of-the-art, one of its kind for the United States training facility with, of course, a lot of labs. There is, of course, training towers. There is inverter systems for, sorry, I'm putting a lot of words out there.
Please.
A lot of technical equipment. It's a big installation. Yeah. And what it does, again, it's to grow our people in order for them to come in from all walks of life with great character and good talents, but maybe never have seen a wind turbine before, okay? And we have the ability to help them safely get into our team, our mission, and then be on the team, have a career with DWT all the way through, and ideally retire with us as, being the absolute subject matter expert on a certain technical topic. It'd be transitioning into a management position or leadership position at some point where we have a leadership development program where we're constantly, as the business grows and the challenges, are increasing and changing, we're evolving, of course, our programs constantly too. So training, central logistics, headquarters, that's all in Houston. Now, we have a very important office and warehouse location up in Amarillo, Northern Texas. And outside of that, though, we have field operations. And field operations is from Pennsylvania State to, of course, Texas, Oklahoma, Iowa, Colorado. We operate in Utah, and then all the way on the West Coast from Washington State, Oregon, to California. So quite a good footprint by now. And then there's also one of the challenges, of course. Initially, if you're not yet having an establishment and footprint in every of those geographies, I mean, hey, well, this is a very big country, man. Presence in one part of Germany, you can service Germany. Now, you have a presence in Texas, you're not yet well set up to service California, okay? So that was also part of the struggles initially, to have that footprint that we have today, that now we can service clients across the nation, even if it's probably a smaller project that wouldn't justify the investment into having all that investment into local leadership, into local safety, local quality, engineering. But now we do. And now we truly have an exciting size, and really it's exciting times because I going through this journey, but also having been with DWT and other businesses before in different stages, right? With the oil refinery, I was referring to a very mature business, almost like actually if you look downstream, oil refining in Central Europe, it's actually a slightly declining industry. Now to a rapidly growing business like at DWT, our team, we have grown by 60% year over year, twice now in a row. So you can imagine what a boosting that really is. In terms of opportunities internally, people having chances to promote into positions and develop. There is a lot of opportunity, right? I mentioned earlier the example of my mentor giving me chances to say, hey, show me that you can manage, right? And of course you do that like trust, verify, and merit-based, but the same is true now any single day in DWT in the US.
But how is that possible? I thought it was all about drill, baby, drill. We don't care about renewable energy here in the US anymore. Obviously, I'm asking a pointed question. But
yeah.
This is for the audience and for the viewership. I think as we're sitting here in Houston, the energy capital of the world, famously proclaimed, not necessarily the oil and gas capital of the world, right? There's a slight nuance that people have to understand.
Yeah.
But this is, I think, if we can educate the audience outside of the US right now in these times. You're talking about all this growth as a renewable energy service company, right? How is that possible?
Okay, yeah, true. Maybe for some in the audience, just to give a perspective on renewables in the United States, we have about, I think, 60 gigawatt of installed capacity right now on the grid. That's, to put it in relative terms, that's twice the amount of wind turbines, wind power we have operational in Germany today, twice the amount. And in solar, it's even more staggering and really fascinating. In solar, I believe, as of today, we have roughly around 270 gigawatts, a multiplied of that from what we have in Germany. So a lot of renewable power actually in the United States. So every third wind turbine in the United States is installed in the state of Texas. Okay, so we think of oil and gas if you think of Houston, but really every third wind turbine of the whole United States is installed here in the state of Texas. We have a lot of clean energy in the United States as well as in Texas. And I believe there is a strong support on many levels. Now, you're right in pointing out that I think it's fair to say, under the current administration, I think it's a fact, not a political view, I think under the current administration, it's probably more scrutiny towards clean power and probably less so favoritism like we've seen in past administrations. And the OB3 that was signed into law, I think it was 4th of July last year, has laid out a path where some of tax credits, essentially support to build energy infrastructure, is being basically put out at some point. So it's gonna, there is a cliff to it now. It's gonna, there is a finite end to it, and the latest it's gonna be 2030 actually for someone to place wind turbines into service and claim those type of support credits. So that being said, yes, we have had rather headwinds as of late in our industry, but it's also true that right now we're installing more wind turbines than probably at any time throughout history here in the United States on the ground speaking, and it's going to be the same for a couple of more years to come, at least under current policies, say it that way. And speaking about, energy capital of the world, it is, I think, true for the Western world, but also maybe we have to see energy a little bit in the light also what we're seeing on a global stage. We mentioned earlier, I see energy as the absolute foundation of the power of an economy, of wealth of a nation, of wealth of individuals' well-being. Okay, there is a strong correlation, one of the strongest correlation you can think of. Look at what's happening in China. So you say, well, capital here. Okay, China, I think they installed 3 gigawatt of new solar last year alone, only last year. They have more than a terawatt, okay, 1,000 gigawatts already online today. So in other words, okay, this is not steady power. I'd say, because you have day and nighttime, and then there's maybe clouds. So a solar panel in the southwest of the United States, Arizona, Nevada, California, West Texas, Utah. There's a single axis actually pitch to where we're following a little bit the angle for the sun. You can probably get to, say, a 30% of capacity factor. So in other words, China putting up 400 gigawatts of solar, divided by 4 maybe, that's 100 gigawatts of steady power. To put it in relative terms, so throwing a lot of numbers here, but in the US, we have roughly 500 gigawatts of power on annual average. 500 gigawatts to power this nation, all together. Us, our private households, the industry, transportation, whatever is electrification, transportation, right? So 1/4 or 1/5 of US total electricity is what China put into power last year, only in solar, and then they install, of course, all these other things, right? So I think at some point we will see that we will probably build much more chips than we can actually turn on, and robots we can turn on. We really have a challenge to ramp up electricity generation in this nation to the level that is being demanded in the world of tomorrow. And with that being said, I do believe that current or future administrations will probably take an approach of all sources of energy. So I, in the present state, I know what's currently put out in the, especially international news, in probably cutting back some of those tax credits and support for renewable power. But I do believe this is just a short period and moment of this industry.
Well, you're at the forefront of this development. You get the sneak peek into what might still be out there, what is yet to come. How do you see what you mentioned, rivalry, China, USA, especially on the energy side? How do you see that unfold?
Let's stay out of the daily politics right now on the energy side, but what I do see is that I think this is
fast forward 20 years.
I mean, we do see that China is really an upcoming rivalry for hegemony of the United States. Look, I was born into a world, okay, it was before the Iron Curtain fell, the Berlin Wall came down, but it was short after. And short after, we had the brief moment in history. We had the United States with our institutions, from the UN to World Trade Organization and such, how we governed essentially the world, right? And then there was a clear hegemon, there was a clear superpower, and everything else fell into place. As a matter of fact, we as Germany were very much leveraged to that extent. Safety being provided by NATO, having export as an export nation at some point, even being the world champion, I think we call this in exports, right? Exporting into markets that we might not want to cooperate at the same level with in the future, namely Russia, China, the market. So in that world order, I think that you saw the speeches in Davos and the Munich Safety Conference. It has changed, probably came to an end, and we see that rivalry now on a global stage. And we're definitely in a trade war, we're in an economic war, a technological war for sure. And I hope it's not turning into a hot shooting war, military war, if that makes sense. We see some proxy wars right now on a global scale. I hope it's not going to come to a direct confrontation. That would not be good for mankind, I guess. But yeah, we do see that on the technological front, I think there is an Australian institute that puts out an annual report on which nation leads in what technologies. And they have defined 76 technologies, actually, future technologies. Out of those 76, it's 64 that China is leading. And the others is US. Europe is not leading in any discipline for future, from biology to other disciplines. And in terms of AI, in terms of having this immense power of probably, alternative, like artificial intelligence, and we're really putting thinking into everything, I think it's a win at all cost situation we're right now into. Because you don't want to have the other party or other nation win out and have the stronger models. So on an energy side, you see the policies where, in the past, it was totally fine to trade with anyone, right? And we had wherever you could produce the cheapest. If I think of, you could, I mean, in theory, you can grow bananas in northern Germany, right? It's bananas, but the production cost is super high of that one piece of banana, right? But you could have a greenhouse, you can have the heating, you can make it happen. I don't know what the cost of that banana is, but it's expensive. And banana, let that now be maybe just stand for all goods and services. You can produce them wherever at the lowest comparable cost. And so you have a free trade globally at lowest comparative cost, the most efficient global economy. I am a strong opponent of that. That's pretty much a system that I grew up in, that probably we both had in economic classes and somewhat have shaped us. If we go through history, it's actually rather the exception than the norm. And right now what we're seeing is, you see that we do not want to rely on other nations for critical infrastructure. For instance, in power generation, we say, okay, energy is critical infrastructure, and it is not sustainable to rely on other nations that might turn into an enemy at some point. There is something that was put out now as the foreign entity of concern. What that is, it's a term for you cannot import goods from China, Iran, Russia, other nations for energy industry in the United States, that equipment, because you don't want to rely on those, and we want to learn to produce these goods ourselves. So you see that rivalry is definitely playing out right now.
Another follow-up question on that, because you already mentioned it. It seems like, and you do get to also see, you probably in whether you call it fortunate or unfortunate position, best of both worlds, Germany or Europe and the US. And you already mentioned Europe's nowhere on the map when it comes to those technologies, at least according to the Australian Institute. From an energy perspective, then what is the future outlook of Europe when it comes to where we're getting our energy from? What are we going to do about, let's say, the US building more and more, China building more and more? Are we continue to be net importers of LNG, maybe, from the US now that the Middle East could not be that great of an option going forward? What do you see as, or maybe also what does German headquarters see as the overall business opportunities in Germany, in Europe going forward?
Well, I think there is a strong drive, as we just laid out already, for self-autonomy. And that is true for Europe, I think, increasingly now too, where we realize, okay, tectonical shift in the world order, and we probably have to be more autonomous, self-sustaining in terms of the power generation. Germany does try to put out and install increasing the amount of wind turbines as well as solar. And now that's intermittent power, so you have to have backup battery to solar panels. The same is true for wind industry, or you have to have certain form of other backup power that you can fire up when the wind doesn't blow, essentially, right? Because unfortunately, with energy, it's a very momentarily lived market. Okay, you have to balance supply and demand of electricity in the grid in every single moment of time. You can't just say, well, we have a few days of delay in our supply, something. No, you got to generate the power exactly of the same amount that you are consuming in that very moment. So I think in terms of LNG imports, that might be a temporary solution, but also LNG, as you might be familiar with, is from a carbon footprint, not the cleanest solution either, because one, there's the cost and the carbon footprint by just all the transport. Second is there is a lot of energy that goes into liquefying gas. Like it's cooling it down to make it liquid is a very high energy intensive process. I mean, we do have gas resources in Europe as well. We might have not developed them as strongly in the last years, but even Germany, northern Germany, has gas that you could, if you wanted to. If there was a majority in Germany wanting to do it, technically it can be fracked, and it's probably enough gas to power Germany for our demand in gas for at least 20 to 30 years to come.
So then let's focus in on the US market again, maybe Texas in particular. Wind in Texas, and I had a very similar discussion with a mutual friend of ours a couple days ago, and he essentially said nobody in Germany and Europe expects that an oil and gas, let's say oil landman rancher in West Texas, would put up a wind turbine or even an entire wind farm on their land, unless you come in as a company and show them you can make money with it. Thoughts?
Yeah.
Because it's happening. Apparently it's happening.
It's a great series, by the way, on the Landman, but not trying to escape this conversation in your question. No, it's true. Okay, it's true. Let me frame it this way. I think in Germany, or other parts of Europe, the world actually, the move to, we're really in a different paradigm. When I started in our industry, the overall energy supply, electricity, was a zero-sum game. In terms of, we did have no growth in our industry, and I laid it out how much we have to grow now by just data center and electrification of our transportation, and we'll have to grow in growth rates that our industry, this energy industry, electricity, generation, has not seen, probably never seen actually, probably since the 1950s or so. We haven't seen it. It's fascinating times to be part of this industry because many people think of electricity generation not as a booming, as a thriving, fast-growing, sexy industry, right? But truly it is. But now back to renewables. So when I started in this industry, it was a zero-sum game in a way that we thought literally speaking, for every wind turbine I put up, I can put a coal power plant, or in Germany, nuclear power plants, I can put them to rest, right? I put them down. So I'm replacing generation capacity of fossil fuel sources with renewable power. Now, that has changed quite a bit. Back in the days, though, it probably was in Germany, other places, a little bit more, I don't say ideologically driven, but for sustainability reasons, really, we wanted to replace it with clean power, which is a good thing to do. But I think that has changed a little bit. And over here, you're referring to the Landman, we may had less so, just relative to European places, less so people in the market doing it for sustainability reasons or ecological reasons rather than making it a business. It is true that here a lot of wind turbines are being built because it is a profitable business for the investor. Okay,
so there's a business case.
That's fair to say. Absolutely, absolutely, there is. Yeah,
and maybe that is then the discussion that's necessary, right? In places, I can tell you in Bavaria, maybe you have to sell it like the business case, or the example you mentioned earlier on. Let the community participate and don't just say, oh, we're going to put one turbine here, one there, one there.
I agree. Local participation, local opportunity to have equity and stakes into those power plants is a fantastic success story of, I think, particularly Northern Germany. I'm really not familiar with many places globally that did that. On the other hand, I have to say that we call them in our industry NIMBYs, like not in my backyard. You want to support wind, you want to support solar, but please, from the look of my patio,
just so that I don't see it.
I don't want to see it on the horizon. You know, when I'm on my golf course, I don't want to see that. Of course, we have a big advantage in the Great Plains. We have just a lot of land availability and not so densely populated like we are over in Germany. Actually, in Germany, there is truly a scarcity of places that are left where you have a minimum distance, safe distance from a wind turbine to housing, next housing, where you can still wind turbines because we have such a small, dense population. Our population in Central Europe is scattered all over the place, similar to actually Japan or Taiwan. There is just very little places left to even build up further energy facilities. So that helps, of course, here where, like you said, we have open wide fields in a lot of places in this nation. And yeah, if you can make the business work, you make it worthwhile for an investor. You say, okay, this is worth the invest. Yeah, it absolutely gets support. And also by local communities, right? I mean, let's not forget, I think it's a great opportunity for rural areas. We both grew up countryside. And so there is not, at least in the times that I grew up, there is not that many of industrial jobs in those areas. And renewable industry, as we are really having our plants out in the countryside, we're providing great career opportunities for people like you and I growing up countryside, where you can have a career now. You don't have to move away from your home community where you have probably been playing soccer throughout all the years. Because you can be part of that community and have an exciting career. Many of us, even when not working at that local community anymore, they might have gotten into a quality, into a safety role, into a sales role, whatever. They might travel but still live in those places, right? And I think it's actually a great movement to provide these type of jobs now in rural places that we grew up in. It's really great because back in the days, you would have a power plant, like a fossil power plant. They would have always been built around metropolitan areas, just right where you need the power, right? Right now, yeah, there is a demand for more transmission. That's a challenge. You're referring to Bavaria, the transmission lines we would need from windy places in northern Germany to where the demand is, the offtake, and that's in a lot. I mean, the industrial core of Germany is being in southern Germany, Swabia and Bavaria, right? Of course, transmission is a challenge. Same here, actually. And I think to the earlier point, with this industry now being required to grow at a rate that we have not seen before, we may have grown at best 3-4% a year. Well, now we need 10% and more a year.
And then that doesn't, as an industry, as an infrastructure industry, I know for many industries, especially coming from software environment or so, this is not maybe sounding as big, but for our industry, it really, really is. And so, yeah, there's great opportunity out there, and hopefully we'll see a lot of more wind and solar plants being installed in, like you said, and in Texas, as well as all across the United States and globally.
Let's talk about community, career, opportunities. We all hear it almost on a daily basis. Job market changing. We don't know what's going to happen to the workforce. What will be the workforce of 2030, 2035? You already mentioned that you're actually investing in technical skills, providing those opportunities to your employees. On the one hand, how do you see it all unfold? And on the other hand, what is DWT specifically doing to remain an attractive choice for skilled laborers?
Well, you're asking very worldly questions here today. Okay, I mean, let me put it out. I think what I'm seeing right now in terms of AI development, and I'm really curious to hear also your learnings and perception, because I think also in law business, this has actually already gained traction, and you're going to see it probably on a daily basis and interacting now with a form of artificial intelligence on a daily basis. It's unfolding at a speed that if we look in history, I don't think we've ever seen a revolution like that. If we look at in the industrial age, if you look at the end of the 19th century, you look at maybe when Edison and others invented electricity, or others, like many of those inventions, they were always, very much so contained for one specific industry, or they were maybe rolling out over many decades. So as a society, we could adjust and advance as a society, right? And now I just see a super powerful tool, because literally we're putting thinking into everything, okay? Into every single piece there is now artificial intelligence. So that's a huge boost for productivity on the one hand. On the other hand, I can also see the challenges. I mean, maybe, did you ever drive with a Waymo? You did. All right. How was the experience?
Fantastic.
Okay.
I think it's
sentient.
Eye-opening, sentient.
Yeah.
It really makes you feel a little insignificant, right? Because to me, first time almost felt like standing at the edge of Grand Canyon, looking out and say, it's been tens of thousands, if not maybe hundreds of thousands of years, and here I am standing, and now in this time...
Surreal,
yeah. You're just opening the door, sitting in the back, and talks to you, right? And there's more to come, I would say. So I embrace it. Because my opinion, and you asked about it from the legal perspective as well, I think if you're not embracing it, to me, I may be a little direct when I say it doesn't really matter what I think about it, whether I like it or I don't like it. It's the future. You either embrace it or you get left behind. That's my approach. Of course, there should be limitations to everything, and some governance, of course, as well. But if I'm just locking myself up and saying I don't want no part of it, I feel like I'm going to get left behind.
I think, to that point, I don't know who said it, from who I learned it, but they said, look, here was a statement. It's not AI that is replacing your job, but it is someone else, human, who is using AI to do your job. So yes, you better try and learn and see how AI can enhance you and ultimately make you more productive. For the hour of input that you have, get more output, okay? Be more productive. I know that's true what you say, but to the Waymo, to me, it was really an eye-opening moment. Like you said, that the Grand Canyon example, I mean, to me, similarly. I remember it vividly to this day. It was in Phoenix the first time at a conference, probably 4 years back. And first time driving with a car, and you feel like, you heard all these, all these stories, or futuristic people, visionary people talking about this. But when you're first time, you're boarding that car, you're getting in, it's like, wow, this is there. And you see them now in an increasing amount of cities. Actually, in a matter of fact, I'm not sure if you know, but in Houston, they're now doing test drives. So they're about to roll out Waymo in Houston. But to Waymo, I think I read on the Alphabet shareholder report, I think we have 35 to 40,000 car accident fatalities in the United States per year. 40,000 people in the United States die in a car accident every single year, okay? Go by the data that it's maybe not unbiased resource, but by Google, by Waymo. Waymo can cut it into by 10, so basically just 10%. So inherently more safe.
So yes, I could say this is a great thing for society. One, you're not losing time behind the steering wheel being essentially unproductive, but rather you can do something, whatever you do. Whether you choose to relax, be more present with your partner, whoever you're with, you're more engaged in the conversation. Whether you are working, whatever you choose to do in that time, it's more active time versus passive time. That's one thing. So it helps productivity on one hand. It is absolutely a net plus for humanity if we have less people die in a car accident, okay, if it can completely avoid it. Flip side to that is though, you see how fast Waymo is rolling out. Uber, we have today 9.5 million drivers on Uber. 9.5 million drivers on Uber. Granted, I don't think all of them do it as their primary source of income, but the speed we're rolling this out, that would indeed be a job displacement, okay? Because what are we going to do? So I think there will be friction. Back in the 19th century, we had something called the Gilded Age. Strong industrial growth, and you had some capitalists, investors at the time, massively benefiting, and not everyone to the same degree. And I'm sure in this country are well prepared for that type of, again, technological advancements. And you can say net positive for humanity, but at the same time, you have such a profound impact on the labor market. Other countries might be actually a little better prepared for that. I mean, think of my wife, she's from Norway, right? So you have societies in Scandinavia that might have more experience with a form of base income, with a form of distribution inside that society.
UBI, they call it.
Base income, let's say universal high income would even be better. But even if we got there, okay, there is also a question around purpose. Yes. Back to the village I grew up, okay? To give an example.
We'll all be farmers again.
But you wouldn't imagine that. We have friends up in Illinois, and sorry, it sounds like grandpa is talking here, but when I grew up farming, the most skilled person on the farm or on the company you hire to help you harvest was actually the one that was driving the harvester, because $1 million, $500,000, like hugely expensive equipment. A lot of you can go wrong, and also very mechanical. Like you had to, like there was no guidance systems, anything. There was hardly even a beep sound if you did something wrong, so nothing. Okay, and a lot of times there was the technical issues with that thing, and then there was a stop work, right? All the tractors, no one could drive if the harvester was stopped. So big issue. So fast forward, we have friends in Illinois, and we were fortunate to help them harvest, really dear friends of ours, two years ago. And they entrusted me to drive their harvester. And I first thought, wow, hey, for me as a newbie, I mean, I haven't been driving harvesters and ever. I was hardly allowed to be the passenger on a harvester as a child. And you wouldn't believe, Manny, these machines today, they are so automated. You can enjoy college football. You can sit in a nicely air-conditioned cabin. It's so different to anything that I have had experiencing growing up in farming. So you say, back everybody being farmers, I don't think that's the answer. I think there is less people being required to manually work in farming in the future too. No, but I mean, back to my village, you always have these examples. Say that there is Tom, and Tom in this village is known to fix your car, okay? Whoever has a problem with their car, they go to Tom, Tom fixes it, okay? And it's not about the income derived from that repair job on the car, but it's a purpose. They have a standing in society, okay? Everybody goes to Tom, Tom gets that standing again in that society, in that group, in that tribe, if you will, in the village. And there is purpose, okay? There is a mission. There is that's your identity, really, to a big degree. And so you can now probably have, everybody has their own examples of Tom. Could be Felix the plumber, could be anyone. So there is purpose that is ultimately also being probably, I say, challenged at least in a future environment. And it has to be replaced with something. And what is it going to be? I don't know. I don't think video games, as much as they get really real and immersive, I don't think that can provide the same type of purpose in life. So it's interesting. Again, look, I'm not a pessimist at all. I'm quite the opposite, as you might know. But it's an interesting time to be alive. It's a lot of first-time challenges that our generation is going to see. I was actually surprised, speaking to my dad, like farming, he told me he was still having horses in front of the plow, given he was very young, and as soon as he was an adult, they had a tractor to do the job, and a tractor had so many horsepowers versus just one horse, right? But look at, from that time to now, writing messages with your son in the US via WhatsApp. What a technological development in one generation of a human, okay? And I believe you're in my lifetime, and I hope for the good, it is going to be even more so an exciting journey. I truly do.
Very nice quote that I've picked up on because you just mentioned it, and I wanted to share it as general life advice. In my opinion, because I now fully embrace it, is I think it's better to be an optimist and be wrong sometimes than to be a pessimist and be right all the time. So,
100%. That's absolutely a quote I use too, for your own best health.
For your own best health, yes. General
That's
life
true.
advice.
That's true.
So does that change your leadership style at all for other managers, executives, that outlook of there will be a lot of change? Are you preparing for that change? Are you preparing your workforce for that change? Because one thing where I think it'll also be super interesting to see a development, because you mentioned high voltage, heights, dangerous, OSHA subjective workplaces, where you might have an applicability of a humanoid robot to at least support the very, very high or very, very dangerous job task. Does that impact your communication style with all the employees that you have, your future hiring, the discussions you have with HR about how we're going to continue to educate, train our people? What do you, on that note, if you can talk a little bit specific about DWT, but then also general advice for somebody who might be sitting in Europe right now watching us have this discussion, how they should possibly think about the future when it comes to leadership?
Okay. DWT, and then I'll go more to leadership principles. Let's start there. I do believe, at least throughout my lifetime, that mentioning the application of humanoid robots working on wind turbines, I believe that is still decades out there. First of all, building humanoid robots that really have capabilities of humans. Right now, I mean, okay, it seems like with the chips and with the AI models, we're getting there close to the cognitive abilities. And probably it's just a matter of time. Maybe by the end of next year, we have AI models that probably are more potent than many humans all combined. True, cognitively speaking. Still, just the robotics. I mean, look at the arm. I mean, one human hand has, depending on how you count it, 27 to 28 ranges of free motion. To replicate, and the arm is just a marionette, right? It's really the underarm.
Former
the hand is
maybe
really
down to 20.
Good point. But okay, when can a robot do that job that you did in the goal? I mean, you know, being a goalkeeper. The hands, all I'm saying is I think it still takes time to have that. Secondly, it's not going to be the first place that is being deployed to. It's also a matter of resources. Having the amount of resources that it's going to take to build, not just chips. We talk copper, we talk aluminium, of course rare earths. It will really take a lot of time. I think actually, in the meantime, and that is the very near future, already now actually, we have AI models already deployed. It is a supplement to us working in the company. And what it helps us, we spoke about failure, it helps us actually reflect, maybe stop work, say, hold on, Melf, you haven't considered this fact. So it helps me probably avoid a couple of failures that otherwise I would do. It definitely will help me be more productive, massively potent to be more productive. So I think it really enhances. It also is helping us to be more safe in the field. Imagine you had, not that I've seen them deployed yet in this industry, but I don't think it takes us to be visionaries to envision that future. You're wearing glasses. Meta has already glasses out there, right? Okay, imagine you have glasses and there is just a reality check, so they see what you're doing and calling a stop work before, so let's say you're working on a cabinet, like wind turbine cabinet, we have high energized power circuits. So there is just a light going on, say, hey, hold on, stop. There is still a circuit that's being hot. You have to de-energize this. And by the way, I show you where to de-energize. Of course, you have to trust but verify. You have to verify this is the safe way to do it. But so think of it really as a partner, okay? So Manny is going to show up with his partner to work. That's who Melf is. That's really how I envision it. I think we're all going to be much more safer, much more productive, and ultimately we personally can learn so much faster. It's like, again, if you have a learner mindset, and you want to learn, okay, I think it's exciting to have a partner. Think of an R2-D2 on your side, everybody having their own, right? But literally, I do believe that's the immediate future that I see for DWT in our future. It's going to make us safer, more productive, ultimately supporting our vision in lowering the cost for clean power. And with that, one, supporting more of an abundance of power overall, and secondly, to a larger degree and eventually one day to an entirety, supplying and empowering the whole nation, our society, with clean power. So I think it's good. Now, on the leadership side, you asked before that, practical skills, very important. That's our day-to-day life today. But in terms of personality traits, okay, and we're actually very strong in our hiring process on that. And so what I mean by that is there is different models out there, whether you do Myers-Briggs, there's different models. We use principles. It's, I think it was funded by Ray Dalio and Bridgewater. However, there is very strong scientific backing by Adam Grant's scientific work on personality traits. So what they basically do is they profile you in 17 different traits, but again, fairly well done in terms of its scientific backing, and basically shows you how you are. How am I as Melf? Okay, and I can't tell you all the details on how have I gotten to this point. I think it's a combination of DNA and a combination of the environment that we're in and the combination of experiences that we're making along this journey in life, how we get to who we are. But what I do know is, in my personal observations, however you are, it's extremely unlikely for you to change your personal inclinations. In other words, if somebody is great at the big picture view and not so good at details, yes, that person can maybe force themselves into focusing on a Excel sheet, on whatever tiny detail you need to focus on when no one else is watching. So it really matters. You are the decision maker on a certain detail. You have to put it all on. Maybe you can force yourself to it, but it's never going to be your strong suit. It's never going to be your natural inclination. And it's never going to be ultimately bringing forward the best version of yourself where you can be in a flow moment. I mean, maybe you experienced those, for sure you did, in soccer. You're on the field, and all of a sudden all that matters is the moving ball. You phase out everything else that's around you. That's where you are right now in this moment. I have these moments, of course at work, anything I do, even gardening, yes, but I think most prominently when I'm skiing. Downhill ski. Nordic is different, but downhill, in that moment you go down, and I like to ski fast, you're in a zone, right? You're in your flow moment. All you focus on is right there. And so that's ultimately that type of experience is when you match, ideally, your personal traits, inclinations to the job. Like, can I do most of what I'm best at? Again, big picture, small picture. Some people, we enjoy meeting people. That's what we could do all day, just dealing with people. Others, it takes a lot of energy to talk with people and come home and say, oh, I gotta read, I don't want to be social tonight because I had a day, I had to present in a big room. Everybody's different. And that actually makes it so exciting to work with people and get to know people, right? Everybody's different. But what I do believe is, however you are, it's extremely unlikely you're going to change. So you better understand, how am I, okay, and what is the best role in any chapter in life. It's your personal life, your professional life, whatever chapter in life you're looking at, to get myself into. And for DWT, you asked, that's like, sorry, we got a little off track here. You asked, like, what from a leadership perspective?
You got on the ski and
strong. That's right. We do a lot into this personality testing. Also, cognitive ability testing. Cognitive ability, by the way, is a great indicator, not just the cognitive abilities of that individual, but also how agile the person is. Strong indicator of how likely is that person going to onboard well. How well can they deal with change? Will they embrace change? Is that actually motivating? Look, I am of that person. Change is quite stimulating for me. Okay, I love change. I'm not, and we need people, any walks in life, when you can rely on the execution of a task from start to finish, reliably, safely, every single time. The 1000th time, the 2000th time, that's not where I'm the strongest, okay? That's where I need to build discipline and make sure checklists, I'm doing this, okay? But boy, am I inclined for change. I love it, okay? Now, with that in mind, we do, I would say, as part of how we hire, how we prepare our workforce, we do have a strong focus on individuals that embrace change. Yes, of course, we have in mind with the rapid changes that are ahead of us, but also a little bit just to the nature of the business that we are. Being a startup, and okay, we're not a startup any longer. We're now really in the hyperscaling phase. But as a growing business, it's an environment where things are constantly changing. Roles are changing. Initially, startup environment, you may start with a group of, I think we were a total of 6, and you're wearing several hats, okay? You have to do this and that. I had to hire people while I'm at a conference trying to sell someone services on wind turbines, and then you have to set up all the legal framework. You have to go to banks. You have to talk to investors, get fundraising. It's like you do all of jack of all trades of kind of stuff, and that is the same for look. First employee I hired, and she's still with us, going very strong. being basically my partner, okay, dancing a tango between the two of us. At all. Okay, so that person had to do HR, finance, setting up IT system. Oh yeah, never heard of it, but I'll do it. Okay, so you have that. And now as we grow and evolve, positions become much more specific. Okay, now we meet way more experts that are really good at IT and cybersecurity and those very, very technically detailed roles and responsibilities, opposed to doing all of it at a 60% proficiency level back in the days. And we are a fast evolving organization, and to be honest, yes with what's ahead, yes with what the nature of what our business looks like, but also now even to a higher level. I think that's what success of a business is ultimately about. If I look at the S&P 500, out of all 500 businesses that were publicly listed and part of the S&P 500 index in 1970, I believe 75 if not 80% of those they were extinct, they're dead, they're died, or they were probably sold and morphed
not
into
around.
something completely different. Yes, exactly. So, the economy, a capitalist economy, is as Darwinian as it can get. Okay, it's a constant fight of survival. And I don't think it's the businesses that have the best technology or the businesses that, just have the best starting positions or the businesses that have the best mold in today's world that they build that survive. I think the businesses that survive are the ones that have the capability and the organizational ability to evolve the fastest, and you can adapt to a changing environment, whether it's the client landscape, whether it's AI, whether it is having a partner of AI, digital Melf, okay. Mini Melf. It's actually very potent. It's not so mini, but and now partnering with that digital Melf to do what I do in my role, right? So it's a lot of change again, but I hope I was able to lay out a little bit of my thinking here and what we really do at DWT from a leadership perspective.
Yeah, and I think that's actually the best segue into the next section of the show, which is what we call the core four.
Next up, the core four.
Same four questions that I ask every guest on every episode.
All right.
And hope to also get even more enlightenment about how you guys do business and how you're approaching it. But the first question is always about challenges. What are, where have been the challenges DWT has faced in the US market? And what are you, as the CEO, doing to overcome those challenges?
I try to keep it more on a higher level, to not dive too much into my very particular business case and industry to make it more relevant for your audience. Plenty, but to be honest, there is no regrets or anything. I wouldn't have done it. Yeah, well, I would do it differently in the future, but no regrets, hindsight, because it's part of our journey, it's part of our life, and it's part of what made me who I am today. So I'm very grateful for making mistakes in the past. But let me give maybe some examples. It really starts with the name, okay? I think our investor is incredibly proud to have been allowed the name of, I'll say it here now, Deutsche Windtechnik in Germany. It almost sounds like an institution. It's really a great name for the German market. Now, as we internationalized, I was confronted with it. Probably I was on the very front line with trying, we were expanding to Poland, Netherlands. Then as we, of course, went to Spain and now here in the US, we have as many difficult German acronyms in that name as you can think of. I mean, it's hard. It's not what a brand is really about. So I should have fought that fight much harder. It took me all the way till May last year. I had an uphill battle, 7 years long, I think. And if I'm truthful, it started way before, again, already in Spain, to make that convincing case to say we got to change brand to make it more international. So we went for something very obvious, I think. DWT keeps the roots for what we stand for and where we started. But at the same time, it's just very pragmatic in the way it can be pronounced. And ideally, we just have a logo, the arrow and the cross, that are strong enough that it really doesn't take any letters at all, because it's like the Mercedes star, really, in our industry, right? It's a great logo, I think. They did a great job on that.
Was the challenge?
That was a challenge.
With the customer or with the brand recognition? Okay.
Both. And if I say brand recognition, think of an employee we want to hire. We talked about earlier how I think in this society, more so than in others, people are willing to give it a shot. Company I haven't heard of, startup, Melf, there is someone with a German accent, like, where is this going to lead me? Okay, is that the best move for me and my family? Okay, to provide an income at home. I think more so here than anywhere else we discussed earlier, this might be the norm, or more so the willingness to take those chances. Nevertheless, tell your family, tell your spouse, tell your neighbors, tell your friends in church where you're getting your paycheck from. Working for a company you can't pronounce, it's a hard challenge, okay? So
coming here without just giving one example, but I think it's something that maybe some of your audience, as you're coming from other countries, you want to make it big, like you say in your book, make it big in America. Do I have the right brand to make it big here? Okay, and don't underestimate how important it is, because thinking of clients, we're a B2B, so it's not like I'm not a Apple. I'm not putting a smartphone in the shelf and you got to buy this. So little different B2B, and you would think, well, my relevant audience, those 20, 40 investors into wind turbines, I can not teach, but I'll make sure they understand what DWT Deutsche Windtechnik is.
Right.
But don't underestimate how important it just is from an employer branding standpoint. So that's maybe one great example. Then the challenge, I'd say, on a personal level, coming here, being an alien, talking credit score, something very basic, okay? But you have no credit history, okay? And neither do you as a business. So getting insurances, actually being able to get competitive employee benefits to where you can now get strong talent that have a family. They want to take care of their family. They need a strong medical plan. They need vision, dental, short, long-term disability, and those benefits that at least in our industry are. And I think we have a very industry that has a very high standard, I think. And so having all of this is very challenging actually from the start. And I remember I remember we had an insurance, like an underwriter. They came early days to the office and they did an audit. They basically came and then wanted to see Melf and DWT. What are we about, right? What are we signing up for? And it was about workers' as compensation insurance. And so I was proudly explaining them, and look, and we had these roll-ups, right? So there was a wind turbine. I told them, here, we work at 100 feet height and we do all of this fancy stuff. And next thing next week.
Denied.
No, simply because they said, well, this is dangerous stuff. So also, understanding on how to pitch this. No, this is inherently safe. We're always tied off where you can't fall. And so, okay. But then there is all of these lessons really that we went through. Again, I think no regrets. I think it's very, very, very helpful lessons learned that I wish, again, to the leadership approach, providing people based on strong merit, again, and good track record, opportunity to fail well and take on more options. I'm a product of people that trusted in me and gave me challenges at hand that I've never done before, but some I succeeded and others I messed it up too. And then that's life.
Well, you already mentioned the lessons learned, which is the second question of the core four, but maybe let's tie the lessons that you or the company has learned over the years, because you were the first one in the US for DWT. Think about the market entry journey. If there's a company sitting in Germany right now, thinking about entering the US market, any lessons that you've learned that might be helpful to them? Yeah, you mentioned the company credit score and maybe the insurance, the benefits.
The mechanics.
Yeah. But anything in particular, maybe that was also a surprise that you didn't expect, that they should be aware of, so that they may be in a little bit better position as they were or as they are right now, just thinking about the US market entry journey as a whole.
I tie it back to the people. Our business really, the whole credit of the success of our company goes to our people and their immense talents. So I would definitely tie it to there. What I would prepare for is, it definitely is a huge country and market, way more dispersed in different areas and sub-regions and states really than thinking of one European country. When it comes to entering the market, having a good strategy on the branding we discussed, the network, where do I get to people that are decision makers, that, we talked about people's willingness to give you chances. That's one thing, but okay, how do I get to them? So ideally, it's your team that maybe has had similar experiences in the past. They bring with them a network, a good toolbox of lessons learned, what has worked, what hasn't worked in the past, and ultimately being able to build a strong team right from the start based on strong principles and a strong company culture.
Maybe one question on that, because it almost comes up in every episode and every discussion that I have. That access, that knowledge, that team as such, to get to those customers, to get to those key decision makers, they have a certain price, right? Speaking about salary expectations. So what's your approach? Because yes, we all know everything is more expensive in the US. It starts with your bank account all the way to your key employees. But are you more of a proponent that follows this and say, I would rather spend the salary dollars on somebody who I know can get me that access to the key customer? Or do you say, no, we'll rather save it, that $300,000-$400,000, however much salary you're having to pay for that access and say, no, we'll do it our way. And it might take us a little longer, but we don't have to spend that much.
I think from a team setup, there is not just the one or the other. I think you want to set up a diverse team, diverse talents and diverse ways of thought. And also that goes to experiences. Some I do hire because of their track record, what they have been able, not just what's in bold words on a CV, but rather in terms of, no, they have successfully done, they have accomplished this mission. They have an established network. Human capital, if you talk of human capital, your ability to generate money, okay, or provide value to a business. Yes, it's your skills and your abilities, but another part is the network you're bringing, okay, and access. So having that ability, of course, some I do hire for that, but you don't only want to hire for experience, because what you then end up with a room of people that may be very satisfied where they are and set. Now, as a growth business, I don't think we want to a dominating degree people that are just at a stage where they say, I'm content, I made it, I'm done. You want people that are hungry, they want to make it, exactly. So it's the combination. So what I mean by that is, though, you want some that bring the network, some that may have to build the network, but they can show me they have good people. They have good people skills, so they can, they give you a good example of how they are able to build access to a decision maker. Maybe it's another industry, but the principles are the same, okay? Of course, that's what I'm looking for. But what I will say is, though, and yes, that is a lesson learned for myself, don't save on salary. Like I would say, for strong performers, be north of fair. We have a compensation system, and also, you alluded to it, I think. Yes, there is quite a delta between the American labor market for certain talent and the European labor market in terms of compensation, but also in terms of just components and the makeup of compensation in terms of what is the base and benefits we talked about, but what is short and long-term, incentive packages, right? And I think that goes well with what we as a business want to accomplish. We're ambitious, realistic, but ambitious and bold, okay? So we want people that want to push the envelope and want to bring the business forward. Naturally, you want to tie that to compensation in a way where you say, okay, if things go well, yeah, there is more so of a bonus incentive than it is maybe the case in European countries. But I think that has to do also with our compensation strategy to bring in people that are hungry. To some degree, as I said, it's always important to get the balance. But yeah, so one of the lessons learned, I would definitely say is, and I did it way too late, sometimes to bring in strategic talent, say we are at a stage now of our journey as we evolve in a business, we need a strategic expertise, whether it is hiring somebody that really understands SCADA systems, whether it's somebody that really understands compensation, not just an HR generalist, but now I need somebody who's really good at in a certain discipline, or a senior leader that is just at a different level, lifts the boat for everyone because of leadership abilities and growing talent, okay? Hiring people, motivating them, incentivizing and growing them, right? So I would say track record, more than often I probably have held back too long to bring this in because of budget constraints, because of also setting those expectations right with European investors and headquarters. Because yes, it's a hard discussion to say, well, why does an engineer in the US make X more than in Spain or in Germany? And then you try to compromise. And I think you should not compromise for talent. Get the right talent. Don't always hire. As I said, the balance is correct. You need to have a good balance there. Don't get me wrong. But for the right talent, be north of fair and get a compensation structure in place that is competitive in the US. Because if not, again, for us, the secret sauce is really our people and the ability of our people.
The third of the core four is all about the future, and I think you already talked a little bit about it. But what's your outlook, the company's outlook about US growth in the future? Maybe personally, maybe the energy sector as a whole. I mean, we discussed it already a little bit.
Yeah, I think the energy industry, positive, right? The energy industry really was at a very interesting intersection and now is on a rapid growth path that it hasn't been in a long time. I mentioned that paradigm shift from not being a zero-sum game and sunsetting fossil fuel, but now actually we have to add so much more generation power over the next years. So with that in mind, it's a vastly fast-growing industry. I think we are really at the forefront of one of the biggest changes in our lifetimes. If you think about it, every generation has their biggest changes that are happening throughout their lifetime, but really we are right there on the forefront to build a legacy as a team. So we're in the right industry. What that means for us is we will have to expand a little bit our technical abilities. Right now we are servicing, despite all the rapid growth, about 3% of all the wind turbines on a permanent basis in the United States. Now that's a small portion of the whole market. There is huge growth opportunities still in the wind space. However, beyond that, there is other technologies that ultimately are going to make up the power mix in the future, whether it be solar, whether it be battery for making it more of the balancing of intermittency. So yes, there is more technologies and expanding into more technologies. That's really what the future for us is going to be about.
Sounds like an exciting future to me.
It sure is.
And the fourth and final of the core four is all about success factors. You guys are a successful European, German company in the US. What do you personally think sets those successful European companies apart from those that may be not so successful, quote unquote, or may just never reach their full potential, or even worse, leave the US market again after 2 to 3 years when they didn't make any money?
Willingness to adapt, willingness to evolve, the willingness to involve their business plan. For us, service providers, so providing services to someone in whatever industry, providing a service means like however that client, who's the recipient of that service, is going to tell you how that service is being provided, whether it's your hairdresser or whether it's an industrial service. And that is different here, very different here. And that has an impact on our operational model. For instance, in Germany, we do a central dispatch model. Like wind farms tend to be very small and then dispersed all over. And then you have a central hub and you have a wheel and spoke model where you distribute and dispatch technicians across Germany. Now here, vastly different. We have permanent wind farms. They are much bigger in size and there's on-site like DWT leadership. And basically you have a much more remote setup in that way. And our whole operations model follows that. So the organization, our processes is, yes, we'll work on wind turbines. And you know what? The turbines default maybe for the same reasons like they do in Spain or in the UK. It might be a certain component that fails, same thing. But the way we approach it is vastly different. Vastly different role also that safety and quality programs play here. We talked about the hiring. We talked about the talent diagnostics and making sure and you bring in the right people into the organization, because the cost of not, I think honestly that's probably one of the biggest advices I would do. If my own journey, electrician, becoming a industrial engineer. When I started, you were the subject matter expert. So people counted on you to make a final decision on a certain technical problem, but you were a subject matter expert. Okay. Now, as you grow in a management role, you have to build and develop that ability to delegate and have other do that final evaluation, technical evaluation. So you have to, the leverage is you now enable a team to do that. And those teams have teams and that it grows, right? And the ability to hire well, identify someone's, we mentioned earlier, natural traits, that I say hard to change. Don't focus on changing someone's personality. Rather, find the right match between a position and the individual's natural inclinations, and talents, and develop someone to the very best version of themselves that way. That ability to see what people are able to do, what kind of coaching you can provide to help someone elevate, and hire right, because the cost of not hiring right is detrimental. I mean, it's not even, for us, it's really the core base of our success. So I would say one skill to learn is to hire right and build high-performing teams that trust one another and that have a culture where it's okay to say, hey, I messed up, I made this mistake. And, hey, Manny, how would you do this? I saw you perform really well on this thing last week. Like, can you show me or can you help me do this? Having that type, because only that way we can be honest with each other about transparency. Very important, one of our values that you may have heard from our business, we have the core values of Tiger, so the T is for transparency, and what it means is we're honest with each other. There is no internal spin. You may have experienced organizations or parts in life where things become very political, and I don't say people say necessarily they are lying or saying the untruth, but they give you a certain spin on reality. It's a very specific narrative.
I'm a lawyer.
Oh,
so,
pardon me.
That's
your core business.
Day.
Okay, all right.
I deal with it.
But that's a very interesting dynamics. I know exactly what you mean. But what makes you strong in that place is not what I need inside a company organization like DWT. I need people. No spin, facts, truth-oriented. Tell me the truth, show me the data, and then, then we're all going to figure out what's best. And we might have a conflict, and there is a healthy debate to have, You may think the best approach to solve this problem is this way. I may say differently. We want to have those conflicts, but this only happens if the team trusts each other. It only happens if you have diversity of thought. If we all have the same walks of life, we all have the same background, guess what? We might derive always to that same solution, maybe with a slight little nuance to it, but it's ultimately going to be the same, right?
So building those high-performing teams where you do exactly this, bring people together of fantastic talent, great character, okay, that are honest with each other, and you can build this high-performing culture. I think I learned it fairly early in my life, but man, if there was something that I mentor others on is really to learn those principles through experience. I mean, a lot of us you can only experience, and some start with it very early in life. You might have something like you are the captain on your soccer team. You might be the representative in school of your class to the teachers. There is early on leadership roles.
Student government union.
Oof, okay, heavy one. I never was on that one actually. I was never on that one.
Schüler mit Verantwortung.
Have you been?
Yes.
All right, but that's early lessons learned, right? Isn't it? Or you take responsibility for younger siblings, for your family. So there is ways you can get early exposure, and I think that's something you cannot necessarily only learn through school books. Maybe in a good book, and there is good reads, you can see principles that made other people successful, okay, and you can reflect, well, maybe some of those principles are also, I mean, that's going to make me successful in approaching some challenges in the future. But the practice, it's muscle memory. You got to practice, like in soccer, you got to practice, okay, you got to do. People skills is nothing you get born with. Maybe there is certain talent, you have a better, maybe a little stronger inclination or so, but in the end, it's a lot of practice.
1,000 hours.
Exactly. That's it. So I think, early advice would be that's really what I would focus on, at least if we talk leadership roles and responsibilities and of that career path.
Another great segue into the next segment of the show after the core four. Traditionally, we come to the rapid fire, this or that. 6 questions, 2 answer choices, you can pick one.
That's fun, all right?
And now, rapid fire, this or that.
Let's do it. And you know what I'm trying to do? I always try to find some nuances that are personally to you.
Okay.
To some we may actually already know the answers, but we'll still do it. Optimist or pessimist?
Optimist. Well, I say this. I think I'm a hyper-realist. So what I mean is I try to understand what reality is. What is the problem at hand? What's the challenge at hand? And also there is an art to it. You can't always have 100% of information. It's something that over time you need to learn. What's the incremental benefits? What's the margins of diving more and spending more time on this versus taking a decision early on? Or where can I take a decision farther quickly on the spot because it's not going to hurt me, okay? It's not going to put anybody's safety and well-being at risk. It's not going to cost a fortune. Okay, so there is an art to learn that 80-20 Pareto principle, if you will. Understand what reality is like. But I will say I do absolutely take a conscious direction from there to an optimistic, positive outlook in life, okay? I absolutely. I think you mentioned it earlier, and it's absolutely the same. I say I better sometimes be an optimist and wrong than a pessimist and right in life. And also I believe, to be very honest, who wants to work for an inside-out pessimistic leader? Do you want to be part of a team? Do you want to play for a coach that is constantly just seeing the risk and constantly just beating you down for all that you did wrong? I do believe people want to be on a winning team, and I do believe having a positive spin for the future and outlook in most walks of life actually pays good dividends. At least that's the path I chose, and that's who I am inside out.
Those coaches are out there, believe me. And that's actually good for the second rapid fire, because that is soccer or football.
No, you're setting me up. Okay, what portion of your audience is US versus Europe-based?
That is confidential, highly confidential.
Okay. No, I will say it depends on the time in the day. Living here, the outside is Bundesliga is played in the morning. So on a weekend, you can watch Bundesliga. And I still follow European soccer and especially, of course, national teams. I'm a sport patriot. I do watch German national team play not only soccer, other sports as well when there's the Olympics or other competitions.
Curling.
Not necessarily vividly following in front of the TV, being glued to the TV when they curl, but kind of jokingly, I said to one, what discipline would you pick if you were to start at a Winter Olympics?
Ski jumping. I love that
Well,
sport.
it's highly, one, you got to be brave.
Well, I'm also a little too
But secondly,
settled sport.
it's highly technical.
Yes.
So I think the odds of, if you want to become good at one of those disciplines and you haven't started in kindergarten, I think curling is very technical. I don't want to discredit at all that discipline. It's a very technical sport, but I think your physical abilities are more forgiving. In other words, even at a higher mid-agers here, I think you can still develop up to a good skill level. I give an example, one that's very humiliating. I started playing tennis I only did it for a few months. And then I started dating my wife. And she's been a tennis pro, actually, for a year and a half. So she played tennis inside out, really being one of the greatest female tennis players in her age in Norway. So playing tennis against her, I tell you what, I would never win a game. I will never win a set. I will not even make a point unless she's lazy and would just give it to me. You know what I mean? So it's very highly technical. It's a sport I don't think you can, I cannot get to in a later stage in life. And I think curling, to that point, I think it is something you could, if you wanted to and you put the efforts in, like in anything in life, I think you can get to later in life. Down to your question earlier, I mean, look, growing up at some point, we all had these, who did you have as a poster on as an idol in growing up in your room? Do you remember?
Well, yes, of course. As a goalkeeper, I had Oliver Kahn.
Yeah, that's right. So,
but if you're talking Winter Olympics, probably the ski jumpers. Yeah.
You were always a goalkeeper.
Always goalkeeper.
Okay, and from early on, all you wanted is also goalkeeping. So Oliver Kahn was obviously.
In kindergarten, I was in goal.
Okay, all right. Yeah, I mean, I remember, of course, those posters. And of course, what you wanted at some stages, you wanted to become a professional soccer player. Probably a mix of two things. I don't think I really had the talent. Secondly, I wish to see nowadays, though, not as a regret, but rather as something how I teach others to approach things early in life. I would have loved to see how good of a player I could have been if I had approached it back in the days with the same type of discipline and professionalism that I approach my career or many things I do nowadays, okay, in life. It would just be interesting, but I don't think I would have made it to the pros either. So
I don't think you have that opinion exclusively. Everybody thinks that, but I'm with you. But
so both. But to football, look, I really love American football, and actually even to a larger degree, I absolutely love college football. What do I love about it? It's a very different sport. Comparing soccer and football, to me, it starts with many things. The goalkeeper is a very unique position, but every other position on the pitch, you're going to attack, you're going to defend. You're on the specialty team too, because you have a corner kick, you're going to be on the field too. Very special, right? So it's, well, or you have free kicks, you got, yeah.
What they say about the goalkeepers and the left wingers, you know?
What do they say about it, actually?
I don't recall.
Okay. But you look, it's more of a fluid game, right? And also, I think as a player, you're playing less by script. Now we have positional coaches nowadays. Look at the real pros. They have a special coach actually on the team now that only focuses on those standards.
Set pieces.
But that's like that's probably in soccer. How long have we been there? 10 years, maybe 15 max. I would say back in the days we didn't have position. It was one head coach doing it all, and it was.
I was fortunate if I had a goalkeeper coach.
That was probably the first special positional coach that we had in soccer. That's very true. Because in college, sorry, not just college, in American football, you are much more executing on a script. Also, as a player on the field, okay, I hope now American football enthusiasts are not coming after me, but saying this, I think you're more executing on a script. So there is somebody that does the play call, okay, and you're going to run that run route exactly as it's called. Soccer is a little different. You have to anticipate a little differently. You could maybe compare it more. Of course, the quarterback position, still play calling, but you have more anticipating, like what runner is now opening up or which one is not, where I'm going to throw the ball. So similar to that, you have to have a little bit more of a fluid read of the game. So very different disciplines. What I love about college football, American football in general, is the tactics to it, the depth of tactics and positional play to it. And honestly, man, have you been, well, you played college, but have you been Kyle Field or any major sport? We should go one day. I mean, go into a major program on game day experience. Kyle Field, it's 1.5 hours from here at Texas A&M. We have I think a stadium packed with 112,000 spectators. And then it's electric. It's amazing. I love the in-game experience actually from college football. So really, soccer or American football, I think it's almost on par for me nowadays.
Well, a little side note for the audience. I think I'm going to have to rename this section of the show because it's not so rapid fire.
Well, I gave a rapid answer, but I also wanted to picture it, right?
No, absolutely. But I have to make one more comment. Do you know what the Bavarian version of curling is?
Hold on, Bavarian. You know that I'm a half Swabian, huh?
That wasn't my question.
So I'm actually culturally not that far from Bavarian.
No.
Bavarian curling. No idea. Yeah, sure. Yes, of course, we done that.
So
there's
hope for both of us because my grandfather at 60 years old was playing Eisstockschießen, so I think we'll be fine.
Okay.
If we still wanted to pick that up.
I'm not sure I'm ready yet to play shuffleboard all day.
shuffleboard. That's right.
But no,
Similar.
I certainly take you up on a round.
Let's get to the third of the six
first
rapid
rapid fire.
fire
Yeah.
questions. Grünkohl or brisket?
On that one, I'd say kale, grünkohl. I am actually a chef at home, not sure you knew. So not every day, but on the weekends I do enjoy cooking. We enjoy hosting at home, and so the kitchen is mine. And we have a beautiful home kitchen where, I mean, it's basically open, right? So you can watch the TV on distance, and of course you have them in the mornings, the Bundesliga, in the afternoon it's the college football, and then we would be cooking several courses, and I love inviting friends over for dinner parties and such. So I love cooking, and as part of that, some of it is traditional German kitchen. Of course, a lot is also Italian nowadays. But brisket, I have to say, I love being invited over to some of our friends that have a smoker at home and are really good at it. I am not. I'm good probably at the grill, but barbecue, smoking, I got a lot to learn there. Certainly.
Let's leave it at that.
So-
Just one question. Most impactful read?
Okay, to not go through the whole library in a rapid fire. One that comes to mind, at least top of my mind right now, is Principles by Ray Dalio. So what it is, someone wrote down principles that made him successful on his journey, and every journey is different. And I'm not saying that the explicit principles that are in the book are the ones that will exactly work for the way of life and your journey that you've chosen. You have to define your own principles, how you approach certain things, right? How you want to lead the team, how you hire. We went through some of those disciplines. What I like about the book and what it taught me most is more think in abstract about principles in general. So basically see yourself a little bit more from a higher level, and see where you fail, where you succeed, how have you approached certain situations, and ultimately approach things on a more principled decision making rather than being in the motions, being caught in the minutiae on a day-to-day basis. And because if you do that, there is different orders of decisions. Okay, going to the gym, the immediate reaction would be a cause-effect relationship. So the first order result effect would be, well, it's going to take a lot of effort, it's going to go. Or same for fast food. First immediate order of consequences, well, it might really taste good, okay? But then there is a second and a third order consequence where you say, well, might not have that healthy of a diet overall. It might have health consequences later down the line. Actually, not just later down the line. I might have a terrible sugar crush just in half an hour as I approach the afternoon. So having this principled thinking, I think, is something that helped me a lot.
FC Bayern München or Werder Bremen? I hope you don't get in trouble.
You know where the headquarters of our business in Germany.
Why do you think I'm asking?
Diplomatically speaking, I think I do support. I'm a sport patriot. Whatever team,
The winning team.
plays internationally, I do support.
Well, then that's.
And I say this: Bayern's success is based on merit, their leadership, and their ability to raise funds. They had, of course, yes, Munich is probably a great place to invest because there's probably stronger sponsors than you may have in other places. But we have other cities like Hamburg, Cologne, or other places that also, Berlin, that also would have that infrastructure, and we're not able to build a club, I guess, right? So I think it's all merit-based because others will say, oh, they have all the money. I say, no, it's not a foreign investor, anyone just dropping a money back. It was all based on merit. So nothing that I think they haven't earned. But when there is a competition between two German teams, say in the very German championship, I have a tendency to typically support the small team. The ones that they're punching above their weight with little financial means, they're able to just produce a great output. And that would be who would I give credit in the last years? I say Freiburg, to some degree Mainz. They have very limited financial means, but look at what they have been able to build over the last years, what a legacy. So now you can tell if Bremen plays Bayern, again, it's not like I don't wish Bayern well, I support them internationally and such, but I like supporting underdogs in that case too.
And the last, sixth and final question, talking about skiing, Colorado or Utah?
Diplomatically, both have their advantages. I think I have been probably skiing, unfortunately enough, I think I have been skiing in both states quite a lot. I do like Utah for how close actually the skiing mountains are to Salt Lake and an international airport and the logistics getting in and out. So I like Utah a lot. Colorado, a little higher up altitude, so you probably have a little more predictable skiing conditions. And also some of the mountain villages. I mean, you might know, yes, we spoke in the past. Actually, I think the best German restaurant in the US is in Western Colorado. It's in Vail, the Alpenrose, not to make any advertisement for him here. But
there's many others.
There's other reasons to go to Colorado, among others, the cuisine, great restaurants. And now between the two, I would be hard pressed to name any. I think both really have their advantages. And I love US skiing, but at the same time, have been fortunate to ski also other places. I do like the après-ski, when I say the ski infrastructure, also with the sauna experience, with just the small village infrastructure that there is in Austria. Really, it's world class. I mean, that's what I don't say I grew up with. I mean, growing up, I didn't have the financial means or anything. I don't know when I was probably on my skis the first time when I was 19 or something, like when I, saved up and I could go with friends. But all I knew was the Alps, right, for skiing. So that was what I took as the norm and as a given. And now having skied other places, I will say it's really a great place to ski. Now, we also skied in Japan. I'm not sure if you've done. I had the great opportunity to travel there. One, to meet with people that I had built relationship with through in the past. I mentioned we had a client in Japan that I always stayed in touch with over the long years, so we were able to re-meet with them, and also were able to ski in Japan. And also there, I mean, what a great level of service. I mean, unseen. It's a great place to be too. So skiing, yeah, that actually would be a great thing to do one day, to ski in other places globally. Have you skied in any other region? Probably you've done Canada or South America.
No. Alps and the Rockies. That's it.
Well, I have two ahead of you then. I also skied in
water ski.
Obviously. I wouldn't let that count. Well, I skied Norway, and I also skied the mountains in Spain. Two different ones, actually. And you wouldn't believe it. Spain, at least the perception of Spain in Germany. Maybe over here it's slightly different, but Spain is such a diverse, great country, from mountainous areas, of course, to the beaches, to metropolitan areas, to Mediterranean beaches. To the food, it's really amazing what it has to offer. It really has good, top-notch ski resorts in the Pyrenees, as well as also in the south.
I would say that wraps up the fire section of the show. And we're going to get to the closing section. A few more questions before I let you loose off the hook. One thing I'm always curious about, maybe getting back to your business, your leadership, your management style. If you could instantly master one skill that could help you, could help the company in the US market here, what would that be? So, yeah,
one that comes just top of my mind right now, something that I'm trying to learn today, okay, is golfing. I grew up in an environment, golfing was seen as something elite, something that you need a lot of money to do. It was, at least in my circles, it was not common for people to play golf. That was actually unheard of anyway. I honestly, growing up, I didn't know a single golf player. Okay, so, and I feel here it's much more in the center of society. Support the business, or me personally, I think it's just one way. It doesn't have to be that way, but it's one way to get to spend quality time with people, get to know people, get to build a relationship, get to know how other people are like, right? And the more opportunities like that you have in life, the more you have to offer. Whether it is you playing pickleball, whether it is doing that, whether it's going on a hike, whether it's the more things you have in your repertoire to meet people at what they enjoy doing, the easier it is to network, right? And so that would just be a skill I would love to put in my toolbox. I have to say, I do golf. I'm trying now, also learning actually together. It's something I enjoy with my wife. Former tennis player, you can imagine she has a handicap over me, but something I'm trying to get better at. How's your golf skills?
Used to play a lot more.
How's in Germany actually growing up?
Well, not growing up, but as
okay.
Football player, soccer player, you have a lot of free time when everybody else is at work.
You got a lot of time off to fill.
Go play golf.
Those PlayStations weren't around.
And it was a thing, I mentioned Oliver Kahn or other goalkeepers as well, and they always said it's good as a balancing act. Right?
Is that true?
Who knows? I don't know. Not sure it made me a better goalkeeper, but it was fun, and I completely...
And it taught you a very valuable lesson, because you can use your golfing skills now in other contexts.
I'm not that great anymore. I think if I were to pick it up again, yes, I probably could. But stages in life, phases in life.
It might be very much so a stage in life thing. So later in life, before we go to ice stock, she said,
there you go.
We'll do a little period of golfing, and then we'll master our curling.
I like that. Check the box. One thing that you really love about the US and doing business here that might be different from Europe?
Doing business here, different from Europe.
being a CEO, being a leader, manager here in the US?
Meritocracy, we talked about an entrepreneurial culture over the establishment culture. So anything else to add to that? Positivity. I mean, we spoke about my personal inclination to be grounded in reality, but take a conscious direction of a positive future. And the willingness to improve, to change, to learn from mistakes in the past. I think that is pretty much the American spirit, though. And morning in America. Tomorrow is my children are going to have a better life than ourselves. Tomorrow is going to be a better day than today. Conversing with people, everybody has their challenges. Many people do. Whether it's on the personal side, whether it is going through personal suffer, whether it is going through painful times of having a sick family member, maybe somebody that they have to care for, somebody that elderly that they moved into their house. Everybody has to carry their weight, okay? But people, more than likely, choosing a positive attitude and willingness to have a positive outlook on life. I don't say black and white. It's not like this is only here and it's not over there. But if I talk cultures, it's all about tendencies. Everybody's different. We talked about personality traits. Everybody has a very personal inclination to be like this or like that. But if we speak culturally, this is something I observe. It's absolutely is.
Well, I tried my very best to ask as many detailed questions as possible, but I'm sure there are maybe one or two in the audience who think, oh, Manny forgot to ask this question, Manny forgot to ask that question. If they wanted to reach out to you and get in contact with you, how can our audience ask you the questions that are really burning?
For sure. Easy to approach and to connect with, I would believe. My contact details, I'm on LinkedIn. I think my contact details are on the webpage for DWT. I mean, I think if you Google me, you'll find the way to connect with me. Otherwise, I'm pretty sure your audience has contact details of yourself. You probably have it as part of the podcast subscription notes. So please make the introduction if anybody wants to hone into anything that we covered today or something that we weren't able to cover, and happy to connect.
Other than golf, anything that excites you or interests you in life right now?
Yes, I have a lot of interests. Actually, my mom, loving mom, really somebody in my life who I think has probably the biggest impact on me, and definitely somebody who gave me that unconditional love that you would hope every child has, somebody who deeply cares for you and also, for making you successful and having your kids come out the best way they can. And my mom definitely, I say, was that way. I mean, today it's a little different. She still lives back in Germany. We connect over WhatsApp, right? And I get to see her maybe a handful of times a year. They come and visit, we come and visit. But one thing she always said is that I really bothered her constantly asking questions. Why? Why is this? I would never take a no for an answer. I would always ask, why does this work this way? Supposed to that way. And I remember, so growing up, I told, like, on a farm, you learn to contribute from an early life, not just tractor, but also gardening. And she hated, when we were gardening, I helped her do gardening chores, but I always would ask questions, and she hated me constantly asking, do this, do that. She said, Melf, please, shut up. So I'm naturally interested in new things and learning new things. Right now, I have a book on my nightstand. It's Brené Brown, The Atlas of the Heart. I like the way she are you familiar with the writing? She's actually from Houston. I think she lives here. She teaches at the University of Houston as a professor. The language of the heart, so talking about feelings and emotions. And for me, with English, as the audience can probably tell, not being my first language, I don't necessarily have the repertoire of different words to describe feelings or thoughts or fears. And that's something I'm thriving to get better at. Ultimately, what it's going to help me with is connecting with people in private life as well as in business life or any other walks of life. But that's my current one. And again, I try to read and meet interesting people like yourself that I can learn from and do exciting things and be an adventurer.
Well, as with any conversation that anybody has with a lawyer or should have with a lawyer, there's always one final catch-all question before we part. Is there anything else you want the audience to know? Any additional advice you would share for maybe somebody who's sitting in Germany right now in Europe, contemplating business ventures in the US, personally, some additional thoughts, stories, exciting.
If somebody's contemplating to go, I think what we learn. If I ask you if you had any regrets, if you ask that actually people that we know very well, what is it? What is his name? I lost it right now. US. He's a scientist. Anyways, he has a lot of research on regrets, and I like it how he put it out. So they did a lot of research on people on their deathbed. Well, what is it that they regret? It's hardly ever something they regret that they did versus what they haven't done. I think it's all about adventure. Life is a journey. I mean, hey, we come here with nothing and we're going to leave with nothing. You might be able to leave something behind. You might be able to build a legacy. You might be able to do things that you're going to be remembered of, right? By people that you have impacted, whether it's a mentor, whether it's family members, whether it's your neighbors. But if you contemplate, should I do something? Have people that care for you, that want the best for you, to challenge, be a sounding board. Find people that probably had done a similar thing before, like find mentors. But if you're at that brink of, should I not? And that might be my personal nature, okay? But I incline to say, go do it. So be brave, be bold, and live the best life that you can for yourself, for your family.
Melf, thank you very much for all your insights, for your guidance, for your advice. I obviously wish you and DWT and your entire team nothing but the best for the future. Very excited to play a little part in that, and hopefully we'll be able to continue to do so. But I think this was super helpful for everybody. Thank you for your time. Thank you for everything that you do. Thank you to the audience. And I think we might have to do this again one day.
All right, anytime. No, thank you for having me on. I hope we were able to delve into some stories that are relevant for your audience, that others probably can benefit from. It's been a pleasure. Thank you, Manny. I think you're doing a great job setting up the podcast and in other walks of life. Really, it's been enjoying also. I mean, you should sit on my chair one day. Next time we come, we're going to swap, okay? I'm going to be interviewing you.
Cut that out.
I think you have fantastic stories to share. Right? That's just being one of the other things, or like the book that you put out. I think you're contributing a lot for sharing lessons learned and ultimately helping people connect and communicate better. So thank you for having me today.
I appreciate it. Thank you. That's the show.
Wait. Before you go, if you enjoyed this episode, please make sure to subscribe so that you don't miss the next one. And if you have thoughts, questions, or topics you'd like me to cover, drop a comment. I read every single one. If you're serious about entering or scaling in the US market, head over to masteringmarketentry.com or mannyschoenhuber.com for more insights and resources. Thanks for listening, and until next time, go out there and make it big in America.